risk and control matrices, and I will be using the acronym RCM to help out with essentially delivering the information. So what is an RCM? Do they really have a purpose? Well, RCM is a tool that an organization uses in assessing and monitoring risk. Organizations, and obviously we're speaking, when we say organizations, it's management, mitigates those risks through the implementation of controls. So an RCM is a beneficial tool that provides a useful framework in helping to ensure that relevant controls are adequately documented while mitigating risk. So what are we talking about, right? So what are risks? Well, I guess risk in a general sense is a situation involving exposure and danger. Though in a business context, and for our purposes for today's discussion, risk is anything that threatens an organization's ability to generate profits at its target levels. In the long term, risk can threaten an organization's sustainability. So depending on the industry your organization operates within, generally determines risks that are applicable. However, for the most part, there are a few types of risks that are consistently applicable to most organizations, and those would be strategic, compliance, I'm sorry, I went the wrong way with the slide. Strategic, compliance, operational, financial, and reputational. As we look, so strategic risk, what are that? What are those, and how do organizations really determine it's strategic? Well, everyone knows that a successful business needs a comprehensive, well-thought-out business plan. But it's also a fact of life that things change, and your best laid plans can sometimes look very outdated quickly. This is a strategic risk. It's the risk that your company's strategy becomes less effective and your company struggles to reach its goals as a result. It could be due to technological changes, a powerful new competitor entering the market, shifts in customer demand, spikes in cost of raw materials, or any number of other large-scale changes. History is littered with examples of companies that face strategic risks. Some managed to adapt quickly, others didn't. A classic look, for instance, is Kodak, which had a prominent position within the film photography market, that when one of its engineers invented a digital camera in 1975, it saw the innovation as a threat to its core business model and failed to develop it. It's easy to say with hindsight, of course, but if Kodak had analyzed the strategic risks more carefully, it would have concluded that someone else would start producing digital cameras eventually. So it was better for Kodak to cannibalize its own business than for another company to do it. Failure to adapt to a strategic risk led to bankruptcy for Kodak. It's now emerged from bankruptcy as a much smaller company focusing on corporate imaging solutions. But if it had made the shift sooner, it could have preserved its dominance. Facing a strategic risk doesn't have to be disastrous. However, think of Xerox, which became synonymous for a single hugely successful profit, a Xerox photocopier. The development of laser printing was a strategic risk to Xerox's position, but unlike Kodak, it was able to adapt to the new technology and change its business model. Laser printing became a multi-billion-dollar business line for Xerox, and the company survived the strategic risk. From these examples, strategic risks prevent an organization from accomplishing its objectives and or meeting its goals. Compliance and compliance risk. So what is compliance risk? Essentially, you're complying with laws and regulations that apply to your business. And we, always want to make sure that, in the sense that we are complying with various regulations and so forth that are applicable in our industries, as I noted above. So, like I said, we want to comply. So But laws change all the time, and there's always a risk that you'll face additional regulations in the future. And as your business expands, you might find yourself needing to comply with new rules that didn't apply before. For example, let's say you run an organic farm in California and sell your products in grocery stores across the United States. Things are going so well that you decide to expand to Europe and begin selling there. Well, that's great, but you're also incurring significant compliance risk. Why? Because European countries have their own food safety rules, labeling rules, and a whole lot more. And if you set up a European subsidiary to handle it all, you need to comply with local accounting and tax rules. Meeting all these extra regulatory requirements could end up being a significant cost for your business. Even if your business doesn't expand geographically, you can still incur new compliance risk just by expanding your product line. Let's say your California farm starts producing wine in addition to food. Selling alcohol opens you up to a whole new raft and potentially costly regulations. And finally, even if your business remains unchanged, you could get hit with new rules at any time. Perhaps a new data protection rule requires you to beef up your website security, for example, or employee safety regulations mean you need to invest in new, safer equipment in your factory. Or perhaps you've unwillingly been breaking a rule and have to pay a fine. All of these things involve costs and present a compliance risk to your business. In extreme cases, a compliance risk can also affect your business's future, becoming a strategic risk. Think of the tobacco companies facing new advertising restrictions, for example, or late in the 1990s when online music sharing services that were sued for copyright infringements and were unable to stay in business. We're breaking these risks into different categories, but they often overlap. And yeah, I was trying to give you examples to see, for different, because I'm not sure what industries we are all coming from right now, and just to give us a thought of how shifts within the business strategy and business model impacts regulations and what that may look like as far as fines and penalties. So bottom line, failure to comply with regulatory requirements could expose the organization to fines and penalties. Next risk is operational. So we've been looking at risks stemming from external events, but within our own company is also a source of risk. So operational risk would prevent the organization from operating in the most effective and efficient manner or be disruptive to other operations. So as I just mentioned, operational risk refers to unexpected failure in your company's day-to-day operations.